Oh, so not so fast, folks. We've got a light on over here. We've got no video. This could be a problem with the RAM. I'm going to shut the RAM off and see how it goes. The RAM off. I'm going to uninstall the RAM and replace it with some other RAM.
Hey there, YouTubers. Right, so in this video we're going to install a CPU into this motherboard, the ASUS Prime B660-PLUS D4. This could be a 12th gen or a 13th gen, so let's talk a little bit about that. How would I know if my CPU is compatible, as well as, let's say, the RAM that we're going to use? We're going to look at that too. So searching for this information should bring you this link here. From here, we're going to want to look at support, and we go in here, we see CPU memory support. All right, so right now, all the 12th gen CPUs are compatible. This does not have the i9 12900KS for whatever reason, but that one may require a BIOS update. How do I know that? I've got this column down here that's going to tell you. So when 13th gen comes out, if you have bought this with a 12th gen chip, you may want to find out if you decide to install a 13th gen if you need the BIOS update. Okay, so this is the spot for that information. Now, memory wise, all right, you're going to see me just grab 2 sticks of RAM that has been compatible with a lot of the motherboards. May or may not be compatible with this motherboard. Okay, so how do you find out if your RAM's compatible? You're going to go in here and basically filter this down. So let's say you bought G-Skill. Hopefully that'll filter. Okay, so if you bought some kind of G-Skill RAM, hopefully you'll find the part number, the speed, and all that good stuff in here. Okay, this is where you're going to go to find that information. Now, I don't do that in the installation part. I don't talk about it, but this is an important step going forward. All right. So let's go and look at the installation.
YouTube's right. So we're going to do installation. ASUS Prime B660-PLUS D4. D4 means DDR4 RAM. So what are we going to do in this video, folks? Well, we'll install a CPU. Okay, 12th gen. This motherboard's good for all of the 12th gen, to include the 12900KS. That one requires a newer BIOS. I just got this, so it may already have all the those BIOS on there. However, we're not going to install that. Think the other direction. Cellphone G6900. Basically, you know, this installation, doing this is going to show you how you would install any CPU, right? So it doesn't really matter that I use that one or I use a good one, but you'll follow the same steps, folks. We're going to put some RAM in, this cheap Alloy DDR4 RAM. I think it's 3200 megahertz. I'll show you which slots to put that in properly. We will also install an M.2, okay? I may remove this one and put it in here. This is recommended for your operating system. This is where I would put that, M.2. However, this also has 2 other Gen 4 ones, so it's really not going to make a difference. This will help keep your M.2 cooler. So if you're using a Gen 4, probably the best place for it. In this example, we're only going to use a Gen 3, hence it's really probably not going to matter which one of these I put it in, right? So I'll also put a graphics card in there to show you how that goes down. Then we'll simulate power supply connection, so the 24-pin power connector here that powers the motherboard, and then the 1x8 CPU power connector up here that powers the CPU. Since we're going to put a graphics card on it, I guess I'll simulate installing the PCIe cable to power that up. Now I'm doing this outside of a case, but going to show you all the connections you would make inside of the case. So that said, we've got all these cables here, folks, and of course I hit the camera. will have the HDD LED. This should be power LED. Somewhere in here is the power switch. And we should have a reset switch in here somewhere. USB 3.0 connector, USB 2.0 connector, and we will also connect up HD audio. So I guess I should hold them down here so maybe they'll be in focus. So we'll do all that. And I don't have a Type-C Charlie case to show that, so maybe we'll grab some SATA cables. We'll show you that as well if you're going to connect a power supply. I said we're doing the CPU. I've got this Noctua Redux 120 millimeter CPU cooler. We'll install that. And normally, folks, I recommend really good thermal paste. In this example, I'm just going to use this thermal paste from Be-True that I have lying around. It is a Celeron. It's not going to get as hot, obviously, as a really good CPU will. So, all right, let's get started. So, first thing, folks, we're going to get into the CPU here. How do we get this open? I say into the CPU, into the socket. So, this guy here, pull down, up and away, and boom, bring this forward. Now, the manufacturer recommends leaving the plastic cover in. My opinion, if you really wanted to take it off before you did this, you could. However, once you take that plastic cover off, that exposes the socket to getting damaged. So you really want to keep it protected as long as you can. Now, you can just barely see it. There's a little triangle indentation in here. Our CPU has a little itty bitty one in there, and then one on the back side. Okay, so we're orienting it with that. Also realize, if you understand what the I/O, where the audio video connectors are over here to the left, if we orient it that way, exactly how I have this, the text on the CPU, if you read from left to right, is basically lines up this way. Okay, so lots of ways to ensure that you don't install this incorrectly. Now, people still do it, and it costs the motherboard companies, and I would say Intel, quite a bit of money as they get a lot of these products sent back. Now, protrusions here and at the bottom, there's different spacing. Another safety factor, how this CPU goes in. It can only go in one way. All right, so we're going to put this in here. We want to do this nice and gently. And folks, you will know if it's in there correctly, because you can eyeball it. I don't usually do this in my videos, but let's pick that up. So those protrusions that are in there, they fit perfectly into the board on the CPU. So it's in there good. All right, now I drop this down, folks. The plastic cover is going to pop off. Okay, boom. Somewhat of a violent thing. Sometimes it's a little harder to do. Now, I always double check this to make sure that that did not cause this to bounce up, and it's still in a good spot. So we put that down. Now you're going to want to put one finger here, grab this, folks, pull down and away, and then under, and let it go, sit in there. Okay, boom, in there. All right, now this CPU cooler we're going to use is completely overkill for this CPU. Why am I using it? Well, that is a darn good question, folks. I think the mere fact is that I would rather install this than the crappy Intel CPU cooler. Plenty of videos I've made showing that. If you have a question on how to do that, I've made quite a few videos. Alright, so off the side of the camera, which you can't see, I'm getting this thing lined up. So this guy appears to be symmetrical. So we're going to put it underneath here. This is the back mounting plate. And voila, that's in. Now some CPU coolers, folks, you will have to put the RAM in first. We will, in this case, actually, might as well do it just to simulate if you had a much better CPU cooler than the stock one. This guy can fit in a whole bunch of different ways. The main thing is I have this threaded post on here and I want to line it up with this. If I want this orientation, which I do, I'm going to have it come in like that, okay? So that's how I do that. I need these spacers here, little plastic ones that are specific to LGA 1700. In case you buy a CPU cooler, make sure you have the LGA 1700 kit and you use all the parts that go with the LGA 1700 kit. Alright, so we're putting those in. That's in now. We're going to need a Phillips head. Of course, we don't have that ready to go, it looks like, or do we? No, I think we do, folks. I always want to do these videos and be prepared, right? Nothing fun. Well, I shouldn't say it's funny. So many people will let it keep recording while they go look for a part. I've done that a few times, and then they forget to edit. So we have a couple of Phillips screwdrivers. I think a number 2 probably works best with this. And we don't want to, ridiculously overcrank it, but you do want this nice and tight because you want that CPU cooler to not only be basically lying flat across the CPU with the thermal paste in between it, but none of these, you don't want any of these obviously at different heights, which would cause the CPU cooler to not make the proper orientation with the CPU. So I'll just go through and hit these one more time. Now some people obviously can put a lot more force on this and some people a lot less, right? Alright, so that's in there. Now, let's do our RAM because depending on your CPU cooler, you may not be able to do this later on, right? So RAM, DDR4. In case you're watching this and you're doing another motherboard, you may have DDR5. DDR4 and DDR5 RAM are not compatible, in case you didn't know that. So I basically am using A2 and B2 slots for a pair of RAM. Okay, if I had 4 sticks, I would put them in all of these, right? You want to have 4 matching sets. So if you look at the RAM, different length here versus that one, you've got to orient your RAM so it matches up with that. In this case, this is the shorter side, that's the longer. So we'll slip that in. Now, depending on the RAM, the motherboard, this side might also pop out. In this case, it doesn't. You still want to try and put both fingers on here at the same time. Sometimes you'll get, when you're putting this side in, it'll click, and you only really need to do the other side, but still, probably a good idea to put that second finger on there. Alright, so second stick of RAM, same way. And you definitely want to, if you get the double click, you know you're good. If you don't hear the double click, might be a problem. Definitely if you only had one stick of RAM and you didn't get the double click, you could see an issue later when you go to boot up and you're like, oh, nothing's working. And that's why. Alright, so we've got to get our thermal paste open. You know what, folks? think we've got some Noctua. We actually have Noctua paste. Why not use the Noctua with it? So Celeron, Noctua has recommended a 4 to 5 diameter splotch of this stuff, right? But I think that was with LGA 1151. So I haven't seen a write-up for what they want you to do with 1700 necessarily. So I always put a little more on here. Don't want to go too much more, but this chip is longer than 1151. All right, so that's on, folks. Now we can put this on. Okay. And I will, while I'm screwing this down, I will have other videos available. We'll do a quick BIOS overview video. And we'll do a BIOS update video. Might need some light now. Alright, so try to get a couple threads on the other side, and then I will work the other side till it's nice and tight, and then jump back over and finish the other side. The original side that I worked on. So there's that, folks. Now on this motherboard, the CPU fan is over here. So you'll want to note that when you put this on. Sometimes I'll plug the fan in first, depending on whether I can, see what I'm doing. So like this might be easier. Two ways to do this. One, you put it on and then do it, or you do it before you connect it. I'm just going to go ahead and do it so you guys can see it. That's the connection. This thing can only go in one way, just so you know. There's a groove here that follows this protrusion off of here, and this is where I might need my glasses, folks. We don't want to damage stuff. And the camera mount's kind of in the way. Okay, so that is in there. Now, this guy, I'm going to show you one side. I'm going to put this on here. So I'm going to do the other side, which you can't see, and then come back over here. Boom. And that goes in there like that. So that's on nice and tight now. So you could come back with some zip ties or whatever to get this from not sticking around. If I wanted to use this for my M.2, I would unscrew both sides. There'll be a plastic film on here that I would remove, and then I would stick my M.2 in, but we're going to use a different location. So this is Gen 3. This is like a Samsung OEM drive. In your packaging, we need to get out the post. So inside the packaging, there's a bag that's got a post and 2 screws in it. So we'll go ahead and just put these both in, because one day you may actually have 2 M.2 SSDs in here as these become cheaper and cheaper. I can't wait for the day that a 2 terabyte is the cost of what a 1 terabyte is now. So these screws are they're super small and super hard to hold on to. Most of us are going to use 2280, which is not that one, but this one. Sorry. If I can get it to go in there. And voila. So some of the manufacturers have a better setup than this. Unfortunately, ASUS didn't come up with any awesome patents. and is using this rather tedious way of doing this. Alright, so that's in, folks. I'm going to go ahead and drop that in just like that. So you saw how I did it. Comes in maybe a 30-degree angle. Boom, boom. This can only go in one way, right? Notice how that's keyed. If this was SATA, it would look different. This is a M.2 NVMe. Alright, next step, you need a good magnetic screwdriver, which I do not have a good one. I've got a bunch of lousy ones. And then we're just going to put that screw in there, which you guys probably didn't see because my hands were in the way, but that goes in like that. Alright, boom. Now if you have an M.2 Wi-Fi, I don't have the additional cables here for the other connection for the antenna, but that's going to slip in here like so, and then you would use a M.2 screw to secure it. So I'll use the one that I have that I was going to use for my drive. The funny thing is this without the antenna will still work slightly, just not that good. But we'll put it in there anyways for the sake of the video. And like I said, you would attach your antenna leads at this point. But alright, moving on, folks. So we've almost got a computer that we could fire up. Now, when you're doing your build, you're probably going to put your power supply in first. That's the way I usually do it. So that would be the connections we will make next. So I would recommend, folks, that you have your power supply, that it's not connected to the wall, and, you know, for that matter, in the off position. Alright. So for this demonstration, the power supply is not actually in a case, and obviously nor is the motherboard. We're using this EVGA 850 GQ. So assume that you have mounted your motherboard, and now you're going to make your Psu connections. All kinds of ways to hide these cables in a case, but for the sake of this video, we're just going to demonstrate it here. So this is basically it's 20+4 Psu motherboard connector, and that can only go in one way. And if you can see, got this tab here that allows it to go in there, and then it's going to click in place. Maybe a double click depending on how you do it. So the only other thing we have on the motherboard is the CPU power connectors, if I can find those. Yeah, there you go. It'll say something like that, CPU on it. You'll flip this around, and this can also go only one way. We will make that connection. Tabs going to be on this side, okay. And basically a double click there for those. So that's how you would connect the power supply. Now, while I have the power supply here, I might as well do a graphics card, because then I'm going to remove the power supply so we can do the other connections. Or not. Actually, maybe I'll just show it from this angle. Alright, for this example, putting a graphics card in, we're going to use the RTX 3060. It has a 1x8 power connector. Now, of course, once again, this would be in a case, right? So you'd have some things to work in a case. Removing the aluminum tabs, the steel tabs that are basically where this guy is going to go. So once you do that, and your motherboard hopefully is lined up properly in the case, you would come in here and drop this in and you want to make sure that's lined up, and then click. Okay, so that's done. Next thing you're going to do, folks, is make this connection, this Pcie connection. So you may have a single strand like this that only has one. You may have one that has two on it, okay? Depending on which power supply you have. I'm going to use the single strand one. And this can only go one way. You have to look for the area that's basically cut out for the tab and insert it that way, and voila, that's that easy, folks. The final step you would do, though, maybe not the final step, but make sure you secure your graphics card to the case with a I think it's a number 6 screw that's included. Alright, so getting on the verge of finishing this up. Let's see if we can get the angle, get a good angle here for you all. Move some things around. Maybe I will just leave the power supply in there. Alright, let's start with the easy stuff. If I am doing USB 3.0 connector, alright, here's an example of that. This can go in only one way. There's a little protrusion there and a cutout on this side. I would drop that in like so. Boom. Okay. This, you guys didn't even see that, did you? Let's try that again. Take 2. Alright. Sorry about that, folks. Protrusion here. Cutout here. This can only go in one way. Boom. Okay. That would come from your case. So if your case has USBs on it, 3.0s, the blue ones, then you will have that connector. Alright. If it doesn't, then you will not have that connector. USB 2.0, or you may have something like this where it's got a USB 2.0 and a 3.0, but guess what? In this case, they're not next to each other. Some motherboards, they'll have those next to each other, so you would have to pick one or the other with this guy. All right. So we'll go ahead. This can go in only one way. It's missing a pin here, which matches up with that. See that? And you would put that in like boom. Okay. Easy day there. There's a second USB in the case. You do the same thing. Now you may use this for the case, or if you install a Wi-Fi card, folks, which we did not demonstrate. So we had the M.2 Wi-Fi card that's under the graphics card, but there is a PCIe Wi-Fi card as well. Say one day I buy something like this, okay? We don't want to put this in this spot. On this motherboard, we're best to use this guy right here, PCIe 3.0 by 1, okay? Now, to do this though, this has a USB 2.0 connector to it. This guy plugs in here. You would have to decide which one of these USB 2.0s that I'm using on the case, which one do I not want, okay? So if you figure that out, then you would disconnect one of those, okay, to make that work. So in this case though, we're not going to go with Wi-Fi, but that is what you would do with it. Alright, to finish this up, folks, we have our front panel connectors. And I've got some better videos out there. This is going to be hard to see. Let me remove these, okay? Get them out of the way so we can concentrate. These are probably the biggest pain of all, connecting these. And let's move the camera down a little bit closer. Alright, so we've adjusted our viewpoint. Now you will see we have these guys here. Shows you power LED. You can just barely see it, plus, minus, okay? So when I do the power LED, and sometimes you find that there's certain ones that are easier to do. This shows you the plus sign on this one and minus here. So we want to line that up and basically drop it in. Easy enough, right? Power switch is the next two pins next to it. And for this, I usually just drop that in like that. It's not as important as the other one is, that you match up the positive, negative. HDD LED. This guy goes here. Next two slots. And I tell you folks, this is so much easier doing outside of the case. It really is. But the thing is, you have to do it in the case. Reset switch drops in there. Okay. So what is the significance of this? Well, one, you'll see the hard drive light when it flickers. You'll see the power LED light, and then you'll have the connection to turn your computer on. All right. Next, folks, what is next? What do we want to do next? We want something else here. We could grab the speaker. Let me see if I can find a speaker. All right, so the speaker shown here does not show you a positive negative connection. We know that it takes these top 4 pins across the top. Actually, that's only 4. It's showing 5. And drop that in there. Alright, so next thing to do is just go ahead and fire this up. Alright folks, so at this point you would plug the power cable into the back of the PSU, click the button for the power, or the switch for the power to go on to the PSU. Then at this point folks, we can hit the power button on our case, and voila, we've got power. So I've made all the right connections, it would appear, and we're happy. It's always a good thing when we get to this point. Thanks for checking out the video. Up, there goes the speaker that we plugged in. But there we go, folks. Thanks for checking out the video. Please like, please subscribe. Thank you.